In today's very sad and somber episode of the Churros y Tácticas podcast, we'd like to pay homage to the victims of FC Barcelona, who were the subject of much oppression and tyranny over the weekend. And here over at Churros y Tácticas, we don't stand for that. In fact, we vehemently oppose tyranny and oppression. So I would like our listeners to join me in honoring the victims of Barcelona today. And I would like to note that today's intro will have an R for every single tear that Koeman and PK had over the weekend. Welcome to the Churros y Tácticas Podcast. We are here, Post-Clasico edition, baby. I-Liga, more than there's been all season. The title race is on, and Real Madrid come away with the victory on their last legs, barely even able to stand by the time the final whistle blows. And they got out, they got in, they got out, they got the W. They beat Barcelona twice this season, 3 times in a row. It's been fun. It's been great. And joining me, we have to solace him. We gotta really joining me for probably his version of therapy is Diego Lorijn. Diego, how are you feeling?
I'm tired, man. I cannot believe it's only Tuesday. I feel exhausted. It's another long week, and I know that you and tons of other Madridistas have been looking forward to this podcast, this edition of Churros. Of course, because of the Clásico, the repercussions and the tweets that went out, and people are eager to know our opinions about the match. So I'm also eager. I'm also excited to get into it because there's so much to be said. We hyped up this class before it took place. We, built it up saying that this could potentially be one of the best Clásicos we've seen in years. And I think both teams did justice to that. I surely was entertained. By both teams, I should say. I was proud of my boys as well. And of course, I mean, yes, it ended in a very bitter note, a very sour note. Unfortunately, for the interests of Barca, we couldn't come away, not even with a point, which would have been deserved. But, without any further ado, let's get into it. I don't know where you want to pick it up. I don't know. I like I said at the beginning or before we started recording, I said I was surprised that you were even here today on a Tuesday today to record this podcast, seeing as, Madridistas, I imagine, would have passed the page and already looking forward to, your matchup with Liverpool to advance to the Champions League semifinals. But so I appreciate you taking the time and rolling out your R's and talking to me today, Kiyan, and going through the nitty gritty of this Clásico, because it was jam packed. It had everything. It had excitement and action, and it had controversy. It had it all.
I mean, if we didn't record today, we would have been canceled. This is like one of the most.
Of course,
the most anticipated Churros episodes are after every Clásico, probably the one right before every Clásico, and anytime Barcelona gets knocked out of the Champions League. Those are the ones that like the ratings are through the roof. So really, this is actually for us. It's not even for the listeners, but. Where would we start? I would like to start.
You and I, we didn't get a chance to talk. Yeah.
No, that's it's intentional too, because we want this conversation to be fresh and not rehearsed and repeated, right? So this is the first time.
Yeah.
Sometimes we'll send shit to each other on WhatsApp, but nothing too crazy or too revealing. So we want to save it. But I think we start or
indirectly on Sundays, Sunday lunch brunches. I saw your fucking stories on Instagram, man. That got to me. You poured that salt right into the
refreshing
wounds,
to see if Diego Lorijn has viewed my story yet. That's the entire reason I posted it. That or we passive aggressively tweet stuff from Churros y Tácticas account, waiting for the other one to see our
very
tweets.
passive aggressively. My God.
I would like to take off where
but you got a great ability, Kiyan, to very subtly get under people's skin. I don't know, my skin. I'll just put it that way.
My favorite one was I actually tweeted something, my own view, like during the first half, like before Benzema scored, I think it was, and I was like, Barcelona was the better team, and everyone was like, "What the fuck you talking about, Diego?" I was like, hey, Diego. Poor Diego wasn't even like on the internet at that point. You had no idea that was happening.
I saw that. I love that. Where do you want to take this one, man? I mean, there's so much to be said. Let me start by asking you this. My big takeaway, like I said, we were hyping this up. I think it did El Clásico justice. What do you think? Did it do it justice? Were you entertained by one team, both teams?
Yeah, I wanted to say that I'm having a good week because I don't know. I've had this feeling for a while now that football isn't as enjoyable as it used to be for me personally. Not as a whole. Like, obviously, it really depends on whose fan you are at this point. But Real Madrid haven't played exciting football in a long time. I enjoyed the Clásico I was at last March. That was really fun. I haven't really enjoyed watching Real Madrid play in a long time. I enjoyed the Liverpool first leg. I enjoyed Atalanta second leg, and the Clásico. I didn't enjoy the performance as much, but I enjoyed the football. Like it, I was very nervous. Like the way by the time Ilaix Moriba hit the crossbar at the end, I was like, "Holy shit, let's just get the fuck out of here." And so, like but I haven't felt that adrenaline in a long time. So I'm just happy to feel that again. So the Clásico did live up to it. I thought Barcelona were really good in this game. I thought Real Madrid, just the sheer grit and the transition offense from Vinicius and co was really good. So I thought it lived up to the hype. And I just and again, we mentioned this before the game too. If Barcelona win this Clásico, I think Real Madrid can count themselves out of the title race. And if Real Madrid win, we have this very interesting finish. And I was looking at the standings today, by the way. Atletico, Real Madrid, and Barcelona are all neck and neck. And then Sevilla, like low key, are like not even that far behind. They're like a few points behind Atleti in first place. So obviously, I don't, unfortunately, no one will look at them as title contenders, but maybe they want it that way. Nobody's thinking about them, and they're happy with that. They can just kind of go and fly under the radar here. So.
No, I mean, if we have any Sevilla fan listeners, let's not pump delusional hope into them. I mean, in Sevilla, we cannot count them as serious title contenders.
Wouldn't you love for them to prove us wrong, though?
Look, yeah, man. Anybody but Madrid. If it's not Barca winning La Liga, of course. So, sure.
Well, there's that pivotal, I think it's like around May 20th, where Barcelona play Atleti and Real Madrid play Sevilla. Massive weekend. Massive weekend. So
that's on the same weekend, is it?
Same weekend, same match day. Yep.
All right.
It's gonna be a banger.
Okay.
So you have no doubt some thoughts. Friend. Do you feel like
Yes.
You tweeted some anger during the match. Do you feel the same? Do you feel the same now that some time has passed, or do you feel angry still?
There's moments where my anger flares up. There's no doubt about it, and I think my tweet maybe caught some people off guard, maybe others not. Others maybe were hoping for that kind of reaction. I felt at that point when the third non-penalty call, and the weakest of the three, was not called, at that point in the game, yes, I mean, I had a Koeman moment where, my negative emotions took the best of me, and I did what I normally try to prevent myself from doing, and that is take to Twitter and tweet out some angry shit, knowing that the repercussions, are there, I mean, for people to enjoy, really. And I guess, in a way, I do it as well because I know that it hypes up our Churros podcast, and it gets people excited. They want to hear my whining. They want to hear my salty takeaway from the match, and I'm happy to give some people, I guess, that kind of pleasure. With regards to my feelings, Kiyan, and sorry, it is around that time when the family comes in, so excuse the background noise. I have to say that I'm very perplexed as to the takeaway of many Cules. When I watched that match, when I watched that first half, I felt pretty comfortable, Kiyan. And all I keep hearing in the post-match and the reflections of many Barca fans is that even in the first half, some people will give Barca the edge in the second half, but even in the first half, it was sheer another domination, y un baño, as they say, a bath that Zizou gave, and I'm translating literally here, a steamroll lesson in tactics by Zizou on Koeman. And again, I feel perplexed because I was rather comfortable up until maybe a little bit before the half hour mark, um, I felt that Barca were unlucky not to finish certain plays. I think with the score tied 0-0, Barca had better chances to go ahead on the scoreboard. And here we go back to the first Clásico where I said Barca was closer to the 2-1 than Madrid. And in this case, I felt up until the 1-0, Barca was closer to the 1-0 than Madrid was. Now, am I taking away anything from Real Madrid and that wonderful goal that, set up by Valverde, the pass to Lucas Vázquez, and that incredible finish by Benzema? Absolutely not. That was a fantastic goal. Great eyes from Valverde, to see the space, to spot that space, to allow Lucas to run into that space, and that finish that, where if anything, I mean, you can be, of course, you have to give credit to Benzema, and you can be critical of Araujo for allowing Benzema to win that position and not doing a better job. But then again, you can also rewind the tape a little bit further and call out Joe Alba for trying to close down Fede Valverde instead of sticking with his man Lucas Vázquez, right? Having said that, not taking away anything from Real Madrid, but I think not recognizing that Barca had chances to score the 1-0, clear chances to score the 1-0 than Madrid up until that point, is taking away credit from what we were seeing until that point. And that was what was it? The pass from Messi to Jordi Alba, and Jordi Alba trying to find Dembélé. A great stop from Thibaut Courtois. From do you remember? The play that I'm talking about, Kiyan?
Alba gets in behind Lucas Vázquez. Yep.
I mean, that right there. I think we have to count that as an opportunity, even though Thibaut Courtois didn't get tested. There wasn't a shot on goal. He intercepted a pass. That for me is a clear opportunity, a goal scoring, leading up to a goal scoring opportunity. And there was another one right now, and I'm blanking. But there were two clear opportunities for me where Barca could have, gone ahead in the scoreboard, and it wasn't until the point where Benzema scores the 1-0 that basically, for me, that flipped that first half. You almost sensed like it's like in a boxing match when a boxer gets punched with an incredibly forceful blow, and all of a sudden insecurity just creeps into the face. And that's what I saw in that 1-0. And I was almost, screaming at the television saying, no, don't buckle now under this kind of pressure. Don't buckle after having gone down 1-0. There's been many Clásicos where Barca has gone down 1-0 and still managed to pick up, a win. So don't lose the faith, don't lose your face, and don't lose the form neither. And unfortunately, at that point, you saw insecurity creep in, and Real Madrid doing ever so well to capitalize on that insecurity by really capitalizing, I think, on the ridiculously high line of defense. I mean, if there's one criticism that I do aim at Ronald Koeman in that first half was, why was the defense so high? And it's something that we've seen often in big matches with PSG as well, where the defense plays unusually high up the pitch. I feel that final line is incredibly high, and it's really a matter of running into space and feeding the ball into that space to players that are very skillful, very fast, very tactful. Your Vinicius, etc., Lucas Vázquez, Benzema, and players like Valverde to spot those spaces that obviously allow great teams with great talent to capitalize on that. And again, I stress this because I feel that there's like a lynch mob after this match on players like Araujo and Mingueza. I don't think were solely at fault. There were individual errors in this game, but to single out the likes of Mingueza and Araujo, I think is unfair. Then in the second half, and well, let me stop there to get your reflections on that first half.
Ooh, there's a lot there. So I would. I don't necessarily agree that Zidane kind of dominated Koeman or anything, and I certainly think that like a draw would have been a fair result. I think a narrow win for either team would have been a fair result too. I think like my assessment of that first half, when Benzema scored, I felt relief because that play that you mentioned, the one where Alba cuts it back and Courtois comes across and intercepts it. I actually included that in my article yesterday. I don't know if I included the actual cross from Alba, but the build up to it, I thought was
Mm-hmm.
a good testament to how much Real Madrid struggled kind of defending. Like anytime Busquets or De Jong would look up, Messi or Pedri or Dembele were wide open in between the lines, and that led to just more offense creation. The thing is, Barcelona didn't get that many shots out of those, but they just got dangerous situations
No.
out of them. That was one of
Yes.
them, right? Um, and
Yeah. And I'm really happy to hear that from you. And I wish Cules would listen to you.
I mean, look, but I also like. So you mentioned the high line. I don't know if you saw Phil Kitro's tweet today. He posted a stat. I'll just read it verbatim. Real Madrid played their lowest defensive line of the season, 6 meters lower than average. Barcelona played their highest defensive line of the season, 3 meters higher than average. Which was interesting because I actually like Real Madrid did most, and if really all of their damage on the counterattack here, right? I mean, it was nice to see Vinicius continue his forms in the Liverpool game. He was difficult to deal with. Fede a moment of brilliance leading up to Benzema's goal. The Cruz goal was just weird and really amusing to see Alba just head it into his net like that. But if you look at the balance,
Dest, you mean?
Was it Dest?
It came off of Dest's ass. Well, it
Wasn't
kind of came off of his back. Alba was at the post.
Yeah, yeah,
At
and
the
then
Liverpool.
Alba's the one who can't keep it out, right?
He
had a
can't
chance
keep it out.
to-
Yeah.
You know, there's I think the reason I felt relief in that moment is like because I thought, okay, well, it's possible that Real Madrid don't need to do too much to score in this game. You know, they can absorb pressure a little bit and be dangerous in the counterattack, have a few chances in, and come away with a win. I actually think that the Liverpool second leg could be similar to the way the Clasico was. But I will say I didn't really enjoy that we were so deep. You know, because I don't think our defensive performance was that good, and I think we went unpunished in a lot of situations from Barcelona, to be quite honest with you. And and I'm okay with that. Like, kind of thinking back to every Clasico, there's always both teams just miss like crazy chances often, right? Like it's not uncommon for us to just miss easy chances both sides and then get punished the other way. So like that's just kind of part of the Clasico nature. But I guess I will say, like, I think I was impressed with Real Madrid in certain aspects. Like I really liked Mendy's performance in this game, dealing with Dest, and also kind of defending Dembele 1v1. And I, you know, so there were little things that I was impressed with Real Madrid, like individually and collectively. I think it could have been better defensively. And I will excuse them because I think there was some fatigue involved too. And that rain, what the hell? Like that rain in the second half was just wild. Like I think both teams really were affected by that to some degree, right?
How crazy was that image of Messi shaking? Like
What was I
that? Like
that.
it like touched me. It got to me. You didn't see that?
I don't think so.
Oh, well, I'm pretty sure it went viral. I saw it in the moment as well. My wife was watching as well. She was going, Jesus. I mean, you see, Messi was literally looking at the sideline shake. You know, it was right before he changed his kit, right before he got the shirt changed.
There was a big stoppage play.
And yeah, and he was shaking. Look, I'm really happy to hear that from you, that relief was what you felt when Benzema scored that goal, because and I think that kind of supports the theory that I was saying, that up until that point I felt that there was some sort of control and leading up to what could have been clear goal scoring chances. Now, you know, most times I think football fans and listeners of this podcast will probably think that goal scoring chances mean Courtois actually stopping balls from going in, and that was not the case. No, but there were certainly plays that were leading up to those types of chances. For example, now I remember the second chance where Messi actually puts a ball into the box, a nice little cross that a player like Dembele, who's not necessarily known for his aerial abilities, is not able to put a header in on target, and his header kind of flies over the bar, I believe, over the crossbar. Whereas like a player like Piqué, a player like Barca doesn't really, or Araujo, for example, taller players, maybe as tall as Dembele, but players who are more forceful with their head and have more aerial abilities or heading abilities could probably have done more damage with that. Now you might say, well, Diego, that's just ifs, whens, or could have shoulda, woulda, but didn't. That's true. But football is always decided by the very small details, right? And that was the case, I think, in those moments where it was because of those small details, like Elias, you mentioned it before, in what was the 89th minute or 90 plus minute. If that ball would have gone, 5, 6, 7 centimeters further down, that would have ended up in the back of the net, and we would have been talking about a fair draw. Small details that decided this match. I disagree strongly with all of the Cules that are very critical about certain players, very critical about the coach as well. I've given up, on some of the group chats that I've been and trying to argue these points. I said I'm going to wait for this podcast to kind of put I guess voice my opinion and put it out there and see if it sticks, because so far I feel like I'm in a minority. It's raining heavy criticisms over here in Barca. It was a Clásico. It was an incredibly important match. It of course does paint another bad picture on Koeman's results against big teams. Yes, we have not beaten big teams so far this season. Yes, Juventus made us drop down to the second spot in the Champions League, therefore having to play a big team like PSG. Yes, we didn't manage to beat PSG or your Real Madrid or Atletico so far this season. Yes, those are all, and it is the second Clásico lost under Koeman, which was the first time in like over a decade or something. Yes, however, I think being overly critical and just criticizing for the sake of criticizing or because our tempers are running high, it's not doing justice with what we saw on the day, which I thought was a highly entertaining game of football where, like you said, both teams could have walked away with the 3 points. I think both teams walking away with 1 point would have been a fair result. However, it was Real Madrid that took the 3 points, unfortunately, for Barca's case. Now, on those small details, we have to talk about a little bit, small part about the referee.
Well, before we get to that, can we talk about, because you mentioned like some of the chances that Barcelona had. I also just think it's definitely worth pointing out that I mean, when you look at, I was actually kind of surprised that by the end of this game, Real Madrid had 14 shots, Barcelona had 18 shots. It's like both teams had a lot more shots than I thought. For some reason, I just remember it differently in my head, but then the stats told me that there were more chances than I remembered. But then I also remembered, like, to be fair, Diego, this also, if it was close to 1-1, it was also close to 3-0. Like those like
absolutely
when Fede hits the post, and then Lucas Vázquez has that huge rebound chance, and then there's the Toni Kroos header, the one where like it hits the back of Vinicius's head, and then Kroos has the diving header, and it's like, of all players for this to
and it just go way wide.
The two worst headers of the game, like Vinicius and Kroos, it falls to them. So like those were huge chances too that could have made it a much different
story. Absolutely. And that's when I refer to the coulda, woulda, shoulda, but didn't. That factors into it as well. I mean, people were talking, or Cules in this case, friends of mine, and colleagues in the newsroom were saying, yeah, but it could have been 3-0 after half an hour. It could have been 3-0. Could have been 4-0 in the first half. I was like, yeah, well, coulda, but it also could have been 2-2. It also could have been 2-1 for Barca. It also could have, if those chances would have materialized, been a different story, and it didn't. I mean, if all of Madrid's chances would have materialized, can we not talk about the flip side of the coin and talk about Barca's chances potentially materializing? And I feel like that side of the argument is just completely being ignored. And mind you, I'm mainly referring here by Barca fans that I talk to on a daily basis, not what's being said on Twitter or the media necessarily. But you're right, Kiyan. Yeah.
So what did you want to say about the referee? This is my least favorite part of the podcast, so let's just get it over.
I know. So and I don't need to talk about it too much, but I feel like I need to say something about it, seeing as my tweet triggered, for the small pathetic account that I have, a large amount of reactions. For me, there were 3 penalty calls in this game not called for Barca. There was the moment where Casemiro stomps on Lenglet's foot and they both go down. I believe this was in a corner opportunity or in a crossing opportunity. I don't know if you know the moment that I'm referring to. You might not, because we didn't see many repetitions on it. We did see afterward, there are screenshots, etc. So there's a stomp on long left foot by Casemiro, where I have to give it to Casemiro. I mean, he's maybe one of the smartest players in the game when it comes to these types of situations. How he gets away with it. He's a master of the dark arts, and I'm not saying that in a negative way. I think that forms part of football, and I commend him for it. It's but the repetition or the images show this as a fact. There was Mendy with Dembele. The moment where Dembele wins the position and Mendy comes in from behind him, and they basically touch feet and makes Dembele trip over. That was not called. And then the least obvious penalty was, that very dramatic, flagrant fall by Braithwaite, by I think it was again Mendy, right, or Mendy, who slightly pulls him. There's a little tuck on the arm that obviously sends outrage throughout the Barca bench and the Barca coach in particular, and it's kind of what culminated all of this post-match drama that came out of this match. Which for me, why did I tweet out what the actual fuck? Was because for me that was the third penalty not being called, and I was very annoyed as well by something that Koeman mentioned as well, the lack of extra minutes. I was expecting this match to go well into the 96 minutes because of Gil Manzano's little whatever was going on, the change of batteries of his thing. I thought 4 minutes was a pathetic amount of injury time to be played in such an important match that was so close, to actually being a draw, where it was just, at that point it was 80 something percent, maybe 90% possession for Barca, and we were seeing Ter Stegen run forward. So when that happened, it era gota que colmó el vaso, right? It was the drop that made the water overflow from my drink. I wasn't drinking water at that point, but it stung. It stung, and it annoyed me, and I'll leave it at that. There were bad calls, there were missed calls, and it's one more. And I think in moments like these that are defined by such small details, such fine details that do have big repercussions. I mean, that's the thing, right? I'm all fine and well by saying that the big teams more often than not benefit from these types of situations as opposed to the small teams. However, I think the outcomes are also dire. Last year's refereeing decisions, allowed Real Madrid to quite comfortably in the end win La Liga title. And this season, I think that Barca's been on the shit end of the stick, and we have to kind of look at that and assume that these refereeing mistakes are not benefiting Barca. And I think in important moments like this, is it the be all end all argument as to why Barca lost? Absolutely not. And that is why, I mean, how many minutes? We're over a half hour into this podcast, and I think it's time to at least address it. I'm not expecting you to have anything to say about it because it's not a topic you like to talk about. If you do want to share your opinions, then be my guest. But I wanted to mention it because it forms part of the game, and it's something I need to out and bring to the attention of our listeners.
So this conversation on churros happens at least once or twice a year, and I never agree. I think it's crazy that anyone thinks that Real Madrid is like the beneficiary of all these calls. I think if anything, Barcelona are just as. But
you could say that hypothetically speaking, but then there's the facts that show something different, Kiyan.
But those aren't facts. Those are just like selective memory. Like
I'm talking about the Clásico. I'm talking about the Clásico.
The Clásico. You mean the one where Rafael Varane got stomped on twice in the box last year and didn't get a penalty? Like, you know what I mean?
I'm talking about this Clásico.
Just this one. So, okay, if you want to only just talk about, I thought you're doing this thing where you bring in Real Madrid and all this thing, that's these conspiracies that don't exist. But even this Clásico, like, so I don't really remember the two other incidents. I'm being really honest. I really don't remember. The one that I thought Koeman was really upset about in the post-game press conference was the Braithwaite Mendy one, which, if anything, is just a dive by Braithwaite. And I just here's where I stand on this, because
You've seen them called.
Shouldn't be called.
And a Madrid-based referee, for all the people on Twitter that call that, a non-penalty call. A Madrid-based referee working for us said that is a penalty always. So for all the experts that we have out there on Twitter and replying to my text or my tweet, a Madrid-based referee working for us, AS, said that is a penalty always. Okay, so for all the experts out there,
that I take that opinion as much as I do when they bring in the expert referee in the Premier League games, and he just goes there and agrees and with every single referee and has no idea what he's talking about. It doesn't mean anything to me. You can bring it
you
in.
discredit an expert. Come on.
Yeah, I do.
How can
Absolutely,
you discredit
because
an expert? Somebody who's been working that job for 30 plus years.
Doesn't matter. We get the same thing. Like we see it in the Premier League all the time. They bring in this referee expert. He totally is looking at the same footage we are. He spews some bullshit to defend the call or whatever, and he's almost always wrong, just the way VAR is. We've seen this time and time again. We all have eyes. We have the rule books in front of us. We see what it is and what it isn't. We will. This is my point. We selectively remember what we want to remember, and we forget the other stuff. There was another incident in this game where, honestly, I don't even bother to remember. But there was an incident where a Real Madrid player was stomped down in the box too, and I can't even tell you that incident what it was now because I just don't really care to think about it that much. But so the other thing you pointed out was, and before I get to a larger point, the other one you pointed out was the extra time and stuff, and only 4 minutes, and sure, like I do understand there was a lot of stoppages in this game. There could have been more than 4 minutes called. There was a study that 538 put, I think it was I don't know how long ago it was now, that they basically found that the average amount of football that's played in a football game is about 60 minutes and not 90 minutes. So like the amount of time that's actually played is like very little.
Amazing.
And so, like, I don't know. Like, if you want to add an extra minute here and there, be my guest. I guess, sure. I guess I won't argue with that. I don't.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. Barca had 90 minutes to score, goals. So, but it's just that in that moment, in that heated moment, and it doesn't get bigger and more heated in a Clásico. So, listeners will have to excuse me for getting passionate, perhaps overly passionate about certain plays and certain calls or non-calls or decisions. That's me. That's why, I'm sitting here, nearly 40-year-old man with a Barca scarf around my neck and talking to my buddy across the pond over in Canada for the past 4 years and doing this podcast called Churros y Tácticas because I'm passionate about this club, passionate about this game, and I live these games with a lot of, with a heart on my sleeve.
I just can't resonate with the whole victim thing. Like, I've always admired like Zidane he's always gives the same canned response. It's boring, but it's like, I don't talk about referees. That's it. I don't care. Like I've always admired that about him. What?
And that's not true, Kiyan. On the podcast, we've spoken. We've had this topic on the podcast, and I pulled up 2-3 examples where Zizou does in fact talk about the referees, and we did this in video where I shared my screen and I showed you the quotes where he said certain things about the referees. So that's not true. When things don't go Zizou's way or Madrid's way, there's plenty of Madridistas within the institution, players and coaches alike that do talk about the referee.
Oh, there's no question. And by the way, I get embarrassed when the club actually puts out these statements like against things. I hate that stuff. I get embarrassed for it. I said, like, I honestly, and that's why if I'm a Barcelona fan, I'm embarrassed about what Koeman is saying. Like, I can't resonate with this whole victim stuff. Let's just talk about the football, the referee decisions. By the way, I still don't feel there was anything there that would have swayed the game one way or the other that was done incorrectly. And I just can't resonate with it. I can't. I hate talking about it. Every team gets screwed. Every team gets benefited at one point. Clásico or non-Clásico. It's just the same old story. It's the same old story. I hate it. It's the worst part of the podcast for me. I just can't do it. Like he was so mad about, and like, I read that post-game. I read all the post-game quotes. I didn't see him mention those other two incidents. I could be wrong, but they were all mad about the Braithwaite incident. Sergio Roberto was like, I was standing right there and all that. I'm like, that's not a foul. Yeah. Come on, man. That's not a foul. It's soft. And like the way Braithwaite throws himself down, I think it was very risky by Mendy to even try to hold any hands or whatever. But like the way the flailing from Braithwaite and like that, If anything, that's a yellow for diving, just to embellish it
The
that
thing
way.
is, players know no, but players know that they can get a penalty out of that. That's just how. I mean, we've seen worse, softer calls being called.
Here's what I thought about way more than the referee. If like that last shot that by Ilaich, I was like
Yeah,
screaming because Modric and Mariano, who did nothing in this game. I didn't see the purpose of him on the field at all. But but
those subs.
Modric and Mariano on that last play, they should have just had been all hands on deck in the box, because even Ter Stegen had come up for that one, and they weren't even
Hmm.
close to being in the box. They were just like up in the up a little bit more advanced in the field. And if they were there, maybe they could have prevented Elex from shooting that and preventing something very, very disastrous. So that's kind of where my mind was. I can bring you a book of classical decisions that wrongly went our way. I'm sure you could do the same for yourself. I just don't believe this whole victim and conspiracy stuff. I really don't. It's never been my cup of tea.
So where does this leave the title race? Where does it leave Madrid? You got Lucas Vázquez out injured for an undetermined amount of time. I
He's
don't know.
done for
Is
the
it
season.
severe?
He's done for the season.
He's done for the season.
Possibly
What are we
that
gonna
Clasico
see from?
possibly could have even been his last game for Real Madrid if his contract doesn't get renewed.
Wow.
So where does that leave us for the season? We have minor good news in that. I mean, it's great news. Rafael Varane will soon be back from his COVID. I don't know if it's Getafe or Cadiz he'll be back for. And then Dani Carvajal will be back soon. He's back in training. So in the meantime, the big question is, will Zidane trust Odriozola against Liverpool tomorrow, or will he go with Ferland Mendy at right back? Those are big questions he has to answer. So it's a tough one. I don't know. Honestly, the
Ramos
team,
out with COVID, of course. That's big
Ramos out for
news.
COVID, but also his own injuries on top of that. So, what I mean, I'd be curious to know what you think, or if this was even on your radar. Maybe your brain tuned it out. I don't know. But did Real Madrid look tired to you in the Clasico? Like,
Very,
yeah,
very. I mean, at the end there, very. It was very apparent that this is a team that is playing not just in La Liga but also um, for the Champions League trophy against a very good side that is a very good Liverpool side who they have to face a few days later. And here we are. Tomorrow they of course have to play the away leg over in Liverpool, and that was noticeable. That, and of course the weather. The What was that? It was insane. The amount of rain and wind. I mean, we even forgot to talk about Messi in the first half. That el gol olímpico. I don't know if you call it an Olympic goal in English, but I think a large
Olympic
part of
goal.
that, an Olympic goal, is what we call it in Spain. Un gol olímpico is when
Okay.
you shoot directly from a corner into the goal,
Oh,
where in this case Messi hit the post. But I feel like he was taking advantage of that wind that was blowing into his favor. I like to think that he was very astute and clever to use that in his favor. Not to say that he couldn't do it without the wind, but yeah, the weather was insane. It was clearly extremely cold. I invite you to look at those images of Messi, literally his body shaking, and of course the fatigue was very apparent for me on the players of Real Madrid. So I think that this gave them possibly the biggest boost that these players would have needed in this time of season with such important clutch matches still ahead of them. I think these kind of wins make champions. As much as we like to talk about champions or championships are won in stadiums the likes of El Sadar and Osasuna, Getafe, El Coliseum, etc., etc. There's no bigger moral booster, I think, than coming away with a narrow and champion-like victory in a Clásico over your bitter rival to set you up for further success down the line when there's only 8 matches remaining. And I think talking about the win factor, the wind is blowing in Madrid's favor. I see them as the number one candidates at this point in time for La Liga. I'm very curious to see what will happen in the Champions League. They've got a fantastic, of course, reason the first leg that'll be very difficult to overcome for a team like Liverpool that is disarray perhaps is an exaggeration, but surely a shadow of themselves if you compare them to last season, and that team that demolished the likes of Barca. So, and it, there were league and Champions League winners. Atletico also dropping points, man. So
Yeah.
you know,
I mean,
are we gonna see Madrid win the doblete now? It's on the cards, and it's the biggest cards that are on the table, I think.
it sounds like a dream for you, doblete.
Oh my god.
Well, just some quick thoughts on Atleti. We went over the schedule. I think it was last week, and they have of the three teams, they have their toughest remaining schedule. And we're talking about like decimated by injuries and stuff. They're decimated, and I believe they received a blow to João Felix this morning. So I think he's going to miss Eibar. So they have the Eibar Huesca game. That's kind of a little bit the calm before the storm, before they go to San Mamés, and then they have to eventually go away to Camp Nou. And then the last game of the season is at home to Real Sociedad. It's from a pure scheduling perspective, Real Madrid has a quote unquote easier schedule, and that's not meant to disrespect. That's just on paper and looking at the teams in the standings. Obviously, it's much easier said than done, and all those teams are capable of punching above their weight. But the schedule does lean towards Real Madrid a little bit. Of course, there is the fact that they have to play in the Champions League, but Barcelona have to play this weekend in Copa del Rey final. So you're going to have a game in hand after this weekend. So I guess we can cross that bridge when we get there on Friday's show. But it's a good week for Real Madrid fans. But as we know, man, football can change in an instant. Liverpool could win tomorrow's game 3-0. And then Real Madrid, who knows what could happen to them psychologically after that. So everything's on the table still. Everything's on the table.
Yeah.
And Lolo, your son, is whispering in your ear. So I think that's a good time to let you go and have some supper, and gives me some time to do some podcast editing and other stuff. So, Diego, this was not as hostile as I thought it would be.
Hey, man, a lot of days have passed.
We're getting soft.
A lot of days have passed. I'm getting older as well. But look, it's in Spanish you say that I gave my opinion in frío. Like I gave it now in cold. Some days passed. Emotions have calmed down a little bit. Managed to go over the game several times. And there are certainly still times where my blood does boil a little bit because of those... because of what we talked about, your least favorite topic. But I think, reflecting on it, it's... I guess my message, my big takeaway is that I feel that Barca fans are being overly critical and unjustly. I think that there's still a lot of good things in this team. I think that that the result doesn't reflect what we saw on the day, and with the permission of Real Madrid, if they do drop points, that we could still see a Barca champion. It's La Liga is tighter than ever. I mean, the 2 points separate first place from third, so anything can happen, and hopefully it will. And these next upcoming fixtures will decide.
No question, everything is on the table. It's possible to lose both Clásicos and win the league. We've seen that before. So I'm not sorry. That is the only thing that makes me doubt, I guess, is the fact that the two Clásicos were lost and Barca losing against the big teams. That's why I give the edge to Real Madrid. Is that that solidity, that factor. It has to count for something. And I don't see a champion out of this Liga come from a team that hasn't stepped up to the plate against the big teams, against the juggernauts, and losing two Clásicos in one season. You said that it can happen. I don't remember. Maybe actually, hold on. I was about to say I don't remember one of the teams coming out champion after having lost both Clásicos. I think you've seen it. That's why I said it. I feel like it's happened.
I think in the year 2000, if I'm not mistaken. And it was the centenary of Barca. I think we won both Clásicos, and Real Madrid went on to win the La Liga.
So I guess to conclude, it's nice to see the tension on the field back in the Clásico. It's nice to see a great Clásico. It's honestly, people will say people will like say like they'll give their opinion on the Modric PK thing after the game. I love that. I love that stuff. I love the fact that we have that back in a Clasico. Any kind of tension is good. Maybe that's because I grew up in the 90s NBA era and I just love trash talk and the NBA drama. And I kind of like to see that. Obviously, we feel more opinionated about it when it's our teams, but it's nice to see that back.
So you're going from saying you'd be embarrassed with Koeman as a coach because he's, because he's hyping things up, but then what do you want?
I kind of like both. I kind of like I like
you got
I have
feelings.
A love-hate relationship with it, I guess is what I'm saying. Like if we had this podcast in the Mourinho Pep era, I would have been very opinionated on everything, but I also would have been kind of thankful for the ratings and the tension and the fact that what I mean. Right. So it's all good. It's all good. It's all sports. It's all fun. If this rivalry wasn't as heated and petty, then it wouldn't be a rivalry and it wouldn't be as fun. So bring on the pettiness and on to the next one. And we'll see where this road leads to. And Diego, this was fun. So join us over on patreon.com/Churros y Tácticas. Feel free to submit your questions over there, and we'll make sure we take care of you. So, Diego, thanks, my man. Enjoy your supper. Enjoy the week. Take care, buddy.
Thanks. You too. Bye-bye.